Hey everyone, welcome back to Jesse's Lane again. Really excited to be here with you guys. Got a good topic. Just talking about is there going to be hyperinflation here in America? Something we haven't seen since the 70s and roughly early 80s. Good topic to talk about. Just before we get into it, I want to talk about the stock market. Kind of what made me make this video in the first place was an article I read. Talking about they believe that there was going to be hyperinflation. So I kind of looked at it, saw, kind of read about hyperinflation, kind of what it was, and looked at projections and thought it was a great topic to talk about. A lot of people freaking out there about hyperinflation. Are we going to have hyperinflation? If you've been paying attention, we've been printed out roughly 33% of all the money in the world, well, in America, at least, the US dollar. Every 3 out of 10 $100 bills that you pick up now has been printed in the last year and a half. So from that March of 2020 to currently right now, and the Federal Reserve obviously is still printing money. We're seeing them buy up government bonds and mortgage bonds as well. So roughly $120 billion every month, the Federal Reserve, they're buying up these bonds, and it's injecting more money into the economy. And they're expected to stop here soon. Nobody really knows when. They actually are talking about that right now, kind of whenever they're going to start scaling back, taper down, if that's what they call it, is tapering. And, kind of when it's going to end, whenever they're going to also raise interest rates. Something else they're talking about right now. Really big topic. Love it. I know I'm a little geeky, so I really like these kind of things. I know just stock market in general is kind of a little bit something I've gotten into big, and really enjoy it. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. So let's get right into it. So how does the Fed... How do we measure inflation, I guess, is what I should be saying. And the Fed uses something they call PCE. And PCE just stands for personal consumption expenditures. So some examples would be like gas, electric, and just like any service, like for instance, yard maintenance, would be an example. Any service that you get, it could be even a car wash, all these services that are out there. That's what they're measuring. So how much did these prices fluctuate in the last year is kind of what they go off of. And let's just take a look at what we were getting pre-pandemic levels. So before 2020. So let's just look at 2019, for instance. The PCE that the Fed that they measure was 1.81%. And I mean, that if the Fed tries to hit a target of 2%, and the reason why they try to hit 2% is just easier. Just think about it. So if you buy a house, like, say 5 years ago, and all of a sudden, every year you get a 2% inflation, all of a sudden that debt starts to look smaller over time. It's easier to pay off. And if your job, obviously gives you that increase every year, most jobs do, not all, but, just hypothetically, if your job gave you a 3% raise every year, obviously 10 years down the road, that debt's going to look smaller and smaller. Same thing with kind of like what the Fed is doing with our debt, for instance, our national debt even. We talk about a lot about this stuff, about how over time it just is less and less and less. So really, we start talking about how, maybe 10 trillion 20 years ago, oh my goodness, these are huge numbers, numbers that we can't even think about. And even today, it's still a big number. Obviously, we're well past that now. But, just think about that. Excuse me. And, all these things, over time, it just seems so much smaller. I'm sorry. Anyway, so those were pre-pandemic levels. 2018, 2.44% was the 2018. So, it was slightly higher than what their target was. But, and again, 2017, you're looking at 2.14%. So those are just inflation target. 2017 was a good year. They basically hit their inflation target. But let's go to 2020, for instance. So for 2020, we roughly got 1.2 was the inflation that was recorded for 2020. And, well below almost half of what they really want. And that makes sense. I mean, obviously, with the shutdown, all those things. And then let's just go, like, for instance, for what this year is projected. Now, of June of this year, the Federal Reserve came out with their projections, and their projections this year, excuse me, is 3.4%. So, they wanted to run fairly hot, which makes sense, because last year we were well below our target, and this year they wanted to run a little bit higher. I don't think that's a big deal. I believe that it's going to help these companies, kind of make the difference of their profits. I know a lot of people don't probably agree with that, but I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they're going to let it run a little higher. And then if you look at the projections the year after, 2022, they want it to run about 2.7%. This is just me. I like that projection again. Again, it's just getting these companies kind of under their feet under them, recover from this. Obviously, a lot of companies got a lot of money for this, but we all know that they still struggled. Now, we look at the cash that's out there, and you say, how do these people struggle? Well, yeah, CEOs may have had a big payday. Excuse me, but a lot of companies and a lot of employees really struggled from this. So letting these businesses profit, I think it's a good thing. That's just my opinion. So it's really not that high is kind of what I'm getting at. From 3.4% from that 2% inflation target that they want. Now let's just look at what's causing this inflation. That's another big thing. Obviously, we shut down the economy. So whenever you shut down the world's biggest economy, there's going to be a lot of problems that happen. Supply chain issues. It's just that effect. So businesses start to struggle, and that supply chain just starts to go down as well. Start to lay people off. There's no work. Obviously, we all know that. The demand's just not there. So obviously, people are getting laid off. And to kind of offset that, the Federal Reserve right away, they started buying out corporate bonds, really. Whether it be bank bonds, just big companies like Apple, just buying up all these bonds, and kind of what happens is obviously banks. That's a huge one because now they have cash. They're lending money, getting money back into the economy, and that's a huge thing. When banks have cash, Federal Reserve obviously lowered interest rates to all-time lows, and they're able to just buy these bonds. Federal Reserve is able to buy these bonds up cheap, and the bank's got to get that money out there, right? If they hold on to it, they're losing money over time instead of even getting even that cheap interest that they're getting back. It's still something that they're getting, over time. They got to get it out, and these are backed by the Federal Reserve, so these are basically guaranteed, money that's going to be held on to. So it just drove, it benefited a lot of big companies. And just kind of drug everyone up. And that's just kind of the idea behind it. Just big corporate bonds, such as Apple was another one that got a lot bought up. You saw, I don't know if you guys saw, like Warren Buffett, for instance, he bought a whole bunch of Apple. And, obviously he did really well from that. People staying home. Apple's got all this cash, PE ratios just, come down, and as that, more people are just looking to buy. Looks better, price looks better, because obviously the big crash. So the Federal Reserve just buying up all these bonds. Then we started to open back up, and stimulus checks came in. Obviously, it just benefited those big time stores that were open through the pandemic. Obviously Amazon, Walmart. Those are the two big ones that come to everyone's mind right away. Everyone buying stuff on Amazon, and everyone going to Walmart. That was huge. And we had $1,200 stimulus checks coming during that time. So a lot of people going out there to buy. Unemployment was coming in, $600 a week. I know that was kind of a disaster getting that money starting to get out. We're in a pandemic. Millions of people were getting laid off every week. So it was one of those things that just took some time. And that's why the Federal Reserve did all this stuff, trying to inject money quicker, get it out there. It just created confidence, just when the Federal Reserve bought up all these bonds. So again, and another thing a lot of people were really kind of spooked about, you look at the Fed's balance sheet and how much money was really printed. Like I said, 33% of the money that's in America right now was printed in the last year and a half. That's crazy. That's a crazy number. Can't hardly believe that. So the Federal Reserve's balance sheet went from about 4.1 trillion right before the pandemic. This is about February of 2020, obviously. And now you look at it today, about $8.3 trillion roughly. That was of July. So, maybe 120 billion roughly be added to that for August's purchases, which is what the Federal Reserve is buying up right now. So you look at that, $4.2 trillion higher. So it literally doubled. The Fed's balance sheet literally doubled through this pandemic in a year and a half. I know a lot of people are freaking out about that, but you look at what it did. It just injected money out there. I know that obviously the dollar came crashing down. We're printing up all this money, but you look at what it's doing now. You look at the U.S. dollar index. It is coming back. It's roughly around 93. So you kind of look at that and you're like, wow, that's really not that bad. So the dollar is fairly strong right now. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's strong and it's just on a bull run, straight to the moon, and all of a sudden we'll see, 110, 120. Excuse me. So what does history also show us about pandemics? What happens kind of after a pandemic happens? It's been obviously a long time since we have this kind of pandemic. We had the 2008 financial crash. This is completely different, though. We shut everything down. This is not just because businesses went bankrupt, things like that. So this is just a completely different. So we can't even use 2008 as an example. And obviously that's really recent, 12, 13 years ago, roughly. What happened? And the last time we had a pandemic like this was the Spanish flu. You look what happened. If you go on the Federal Reserve, actually, they have this sheet, and you kind of see inflation right away. As soon as you kind of open back up, as soon as that third wave is what I was seeing. After that third wave of the Spanish flu, you kind of saw inflation kind of shoot up by quite a bit. Kind of what we're seeing now, actually slightly more than what we're seeing now. But if you look at that, it was a huge spike. And then you kind of look at it, gradually over time, about 3 years later, roughly. So I took a look from about 1917 to about 1921. 1917 is right before, and then you kind of look at it, you see that nice little spike in 1917 to 1918, 1919, kind of started shooting up a little bit, obviously right after kind of the pandemic's over. And you saw it in 1921, really whenever it started to take off, because obviously we had deflation, everyone staying at home, not going out as much, all those kind of things. So it kind of dropped and then just spiked And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So in my opinion right now, we're fair. I mean, obviously we could have another wave that comes in, we could start this process all over again, which, we could talk about that. But for now, we're talking about how the trajectory we're on right now. And for what I'm seeing, we're seeing that nice little spike right now, just like in 1921. And then you look further out. You look from 22, 23, 24. You start to see exactly what Jerome Powell's been saying. It's transitory. So we had that nice little spike, obviously, and now we're coming back down. And that's kind of actually what we're seeing right now. I know a lot of people are, throwing this out. They're saying, no, we're having big inflation. Yes, we are. But you have to look at it year over year. Where were we at a year ago, August of this pandemic? Were we having another spike? Yes, we were. Were all businesses open? No, they weren't. Not even close. So you have to take a look at everything. And that's the reason why I'm saying I don't see us having hyperinflation anytime in the near future. And I'm just going off of what history is showing us from the last pandemic. Obviously, things are different, but I just believe in what Jerome Powell's saying. It's transitory. Yes, it's a little bit higher than what we expected. We didn't expect the demand to be there. You're looking at supply chain issues. We still have unemployment pay, which is ending, ironically, on Labor Day, which is kind of funny. I think Congress planned that on purpose. I thought that was funny, though. So is it transitory, just like Jerome Powell's been saying? For me, yes. I think it's, if you look at all these graphs, take a look at what history did. Just before the pandemic, you saw just exactly the same thing. It went down, deflation. Obviously, whenever everything kind of opened back up and everyone was safe, felt safe again, we saw that big spike. And it's normal because supply chain issues are all jacked up right now. We have people still on unemployment. Not everyone's back to work. You look at what other countries like China, they've had to shut down these huge shipyards for containers. That just jacks up everything. Obviously, the prices are going up right now. So I agree with Jerome Powell. I see it as transitory. And I agree with a lot of people, actually. I think that this is going to be kind of a hard time to keep that 2% inflation target that they're wanting to get. Yes, we're going to probably hit it this year unless, obviously, we shut down. But I'm not seeing... I just see these supply chain issues just such a big deal. And once we kind of get this virus under control even more, I see nothing but good things in the future. Obviously we could talk about the national debt 10 years down the road. That's something else that we could talk about later. But again, I see more deflation upcoming in the next several years than inflation. I just see good demand. I see interest rates raising exactly whenever the Federal Reserve says 2023, 2024, looking more like 2023 now, which is a good thing. We want to make that dollar stronger. So I love it. I think we're exactly right on the same pace. Did we print a little bit too much money? You could argue that. But I think for the most part, we're going to be right where we need to be. I think everyone did a good job during the pandemic. Government included. Yes, I know a lot of people were frustrated with them. Could they have acted sooner? Yes, obviously they could have. But I think for the most part, they came in right on time. And again, as I was saying, we just saw more deflation than inflation. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see for the future, 3-4 years down the road. But we'll see. We'll be able to revisit this here in the next 3-4 years, see kind of how it went. So thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully be bringing you another one here really soon. Thanks.